Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Colorwood for YouTube, here to continue my read-along review of To Benight Beguile, Book 4, Chapter 10, Chaos in the Dark. A continued storm slammed the islands of Welshport and Good in the Frenchman Bay of the state of Maine. The ocean crashed like an angry beast. They wanted to swallow the islands whole in the center of the Terramore Forest. The Lord family mansion was under siege by a creature's fury. Father Donovan Ryan held up a cross in the face of evil. The lights flickered, the thunder cracked in the sky with a lightning flash that lit up the room. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Father Ryan prayed out loud. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Gregory and Jacob joined in, Caspian, the creature tied to the bed, whose eyes were dead, black, and vacant, laughed in the face of the prayers. This is futile. All of this is too late. When will you learn? I've been let in, and I've been given the strength to carry on more than the three of you even know, Caspian said. Shut up! Shut up! Jacob yelled at him as the lights in the house flickered again. Off and on, off and on, off and on. Do not speak to him. I demand you leave this place. Leave this place now, and stay forever away. I command you by the love of the Lord, by the lights of heaven, to leave this place, this body, this house forever. Father Ryan said, as Jacob and Gregory, who flanked Caspian's bed, crossed themselves. Amen, the two men said. Caspian laughed. He was subdued by the ropes and by the cross in his face, but his powers were still very strong. The storm let out a loud bang of thunder again. Rebecca, who was fully possessed by the powers of Caspian, was in her room staring at herself in the mirror. Her face was vacant, her mind controlled, her eyes glowing yellow. Then, in a spark of insanity, she screamed into the mirror. She ripped the ribbon that was holding her braids tightly in place and let her wild curls free. The scream was almost inhuman. She grabbed a glass bottle of perfume and slammed it into the mirror, shattering both and slicing her hand open. Her mind was crumbling into the wild disaster of Caspian's control. The stoic and firm Rebecca was now just a vacant pawn of insanity powered by Caspian's promise of the return of Rebecca's lost daughter in exchange for the evil sacrifice of Evie's coming baby. Then the flickering of electricity continued, weakened by the storm, suddenly went out, leaving an insane Rebecca bleeding in the dark. Only blackness now. The entire mansion was under the shadow of night, with only candles burning and the flashing of the lightning outside. Or sorry, lighting outside. Rebecca screamed again, her mind infected by Caspian's evil. She grabbed a lit candle and rushed down the hall, long and winding, and burst into Caspian's room. Mother, get out! Jacob screamed at her. Caspian looked at her. His eyes flashed from black to yellow, then back to black. Rebecca tried to snatch the cross from Father Donovan's cross from his hand, but she missed. Jacob got up from the bedside and went over to his mother and shook her. What in the world are you doing? Get out of here. This is a dangerous place, Jacob said as his breath puffed in the cold room. I will not let you do this. All of you will know the truth soon. We have to keep the sacrifice. We have to keep the sacrifice, Rebecca said, repeating herself over and over again. She's out of her mind, Gregory shouted. Caspian then closed his eyes. The room's temperature dropped even colder. The windows burst open and blew in. Rain splattered all over the wooden floors. Curtains lifted as the wind blew in. Papers began to fly from the desks, and picture frames began to shake. He began to laugh, a deep and sinister laugh that felt like it was coming from the depths of hell. By the power of God, the Lord our Savior, I command you to leave this place, leave this body, leave this world forever, Father Ryan screamed at the demon. Caspian's body began to float off the bed, but remained tied by the ropes. He laughed as a glowing yellow energy swirled around him. Father Ryan continued to pray. He held tight to the cross and sprayed Caspian with holy water with a silver aspergillum. I probably mispronounced it. The drops froze midair and hit Caspian's body like little rocks of hell. Mother, get out of here. Get out now, Jacob shouted to her over the wild coming from the window. You have to stop this. You have to stop this, Rebecca said, her hair swollen in the wind, her mind in shatters from what it once was, thanks to Caspian's powers. He's here to save us. He's here to protect us. He's here to take us back where we need to be. What is she talking about? Gregory screamed as he tried to pull Caspian's floating body down. Mother, get out, Jacob screamed as Father Ryan continued to pray. Rebecca's mind was completely overtaken by the creature. As Jacob tried to push her towards the door and closed it on her, she reached over as she passed a desk and grabbed a letter opener. She raised her hand and brought it down to stab Jacob in the arm, but he blocked her with his other arm. She was now screaming like a mad woman. Her mind slipping away, Jacob squeezed her wrist. She roared like a pinned down wild animal. The letter opener fell to the floor. Jacob slapped his mother across the face, which seemed to bring her back to some sort of normalcy. Wait, what am I doing? What's happening? Rebecca asked, clearly out of her mind, but Caspian's eyes signaled to her again. Stop this, she added. He's going to save us. We have the sacrifice, she screamed. What sacrifice, Jacob? Get out of here, Gregory yelled again. Jacob nodded and continued to push his mother back out of the room and into the shadowy hallway. Jacob, stop, she screamed at the door as the door closed on her face. Inside the room, the creature tied to the bed opened his mouth and let out a roar that shook the whole house. Celeste, Charlotte, and baby Fabian trembled in the nursery as the house shook. The door burst open and Aurora came in. Hide, she said. What's happening? Celeste asked. Just hide. Take the children and hide, Aurora repeated before rushing back out. In their shared room, despite their decision to break up, Jonathan and Genevieve were awakened by the shaking. What was that? Jonathan asked in his groggy voice. Genevieve reached over to flick on the lamp. The electricity is out. It must be the storm, Genevieve said. Then she felt that the ghost of Sabrina that lived inside Genevieve's body felt the powers down the main hall over in the room where Caspian was. She stood up from the bed and stared at the door in the dark. Something was coming. Get up, she said in a hushed voice. What? Jonathan asked, confused. Get up, Jonathan, she replied, her voice almost paralyzed in tone. What is going on? He asked again. We have to get out of here, Genevieve replied. Jonathan got up and reached for his robe and swiftly slipped into it. He looked at Genevieve, who seemed frozen in fear, only because she knew what was coming. The devil, the demon down the hall, was raging. Let's see, where did that go? Oh. Then the door opened. It was Aurora. Hide, she shouted. Jonathan grabbed Genevieve's hand, and they took off down the hall to hide somewhere else. away from whatever was happening. As the two recently broken up couple made their way down the long hall, the look that took them towards the nursery, they ran in Celeste, Charlotte, and baby Fabian. What's happening? Is it a hurricane? Jonathan asked Celeste. Charlotte looked at Genevieve, the two knowing something much more supernatural was occurring than weather related. Charlotte, take the baby to my room and wait for me there. Jonathan, Genevieve, follow me, Celeste said as she grabbed some candles and matches. Charlotte then took baby Fabian and did as her stepmother said. Come with me, Celeste said to her brother and Genevieve. Celeste rushed back down another hallway. Jonathan and Genevieve followed close behind as the storm raging on, and as Caspian's exorcism continued on the opposite side of the east wing. Celeste's nightgown of soft silks flowed in the air as she ran. The curls of dark hair, like a lion's mane, swished in the cold mansion's air. The spirit of Sabrina, Lord, that now lived inside of Genevieve. The spirit of Sabrina Lord that now lived inside of Genevieve felt her body tighten with fear. She had not felt this feeling in many years. The sensations of human emotion seemed to overcome her. She began to cry out of fright. She began to feel a real dread. The day Jacob killed her, Genevieve's human emotions were now part of Sabrina, and it was overwhelming her in real time. Where are we going? Jonathan asked her as the three kept running. Celeste suddenly stopped and felt the walls of a strange hallway that led them into the west wing. They stood in front of a wall that had a painted door that matched the mural of the wall it hung on. This door led to secret tunnels below the mansion that once took the family from the west wing down several secret corridors, down through the mansion into a long dark room below the house. It was a safe room to hide the richest family on the eastern seaboard from anything and everything they feared. Celeste pulled a key from her pocket and unlocked the secret door. Go in here, and when this is over, I'll come for you, she told Jonathan and Genevieve. What? You're not going in here? What's happening? Jonathan asked. Celeste truly didn't know what she had plenty of past events of Terramore lodged in her mind to know that whatever was shaking the mansion, whatever was hurling the feeling of death and terror in her body was real, and it was unflinching. Celeste had seen death. She had seen darkness around each corner of the mansion before. She was not going to allow it to creep into her life and take any more lives of people she loved, not even if it would benefit her. Jonathan, listen to me, Celeste said, grabbing her brother's hands. Out of Genevieve's grasp, you want to be a part of this family so badly. Well, this is a large part of this family. They have deep roots in the world of darkness and in things we do not understand. Whatever is shaking this house right now has more to do with that than it does with the storm above us now. I'm asking you right now to go in this hiding place and there. Stay there until I come for you. Tell you it's safe, Celeste ordered. Genevieve grabbed Jonathan's hand away from Celeste. Listen to her, she said, Sabrina's mind now controlling Genevieve's whole body. She too knew the darkness that could creep up in the mansion and kill anyone. Jonathan looked at Celeste, then looked at Genevieve. Both had expressions of terror written all over their face. The thunder clapped again, flashing in the windows just beyond the hallway that hid away this hidden door. Jonathan, without saying anything, took Genevieve into the secret passage to Celeste's relief. Celeste handed them candles and matches and then pulled on the door to close it. Come back, Jonathan said. Get Charlotte and Fabian and come back, he added. Celeste lifted a brow, lifting her face with a white flash, and said nothing and closed the door. Jonathan and Genevieve stood in the darkness and listened to Celeste lock them in the secret tunnels inside of Terramore House. She'll come back, she will, Jonathan said to Genevieve. But in truth, he wasn't so sure she would. At the hospital, Nick and Ashio were having a long night. They worked for hours and hours. As the two continued to make their way to being official doctors, Nick, for his part, was pushing himself to working in the psychiatric part of the medical field, while Ashia was learning towards family medicine. Leaning in the small room where they were studying, the light began to flicker off and on, and then suddenly completely off. This storm is out of control, Nick said as he got up and looked out of the window. I don't think I've ever seen it this strong before, as she replied. Dr. Ward entered the room with a lantern and some extra candles. Are you two okay? He asked. Yes, doctor, she replied. Is everything all right? Nick asked. Dr. Ward nodded. Just a power outage. We'll have to wait this one out. The storm is quite strong. The nurses have been instructed to tap into the lantern and candle supply and bring them to each hospital room. We've also given our most ill patients the medicine to help them sleep through the night. I'll be glad to stay on and help, Nick replied. Ashia said she would too. Oh, thank you both. I'm going to head home. My wife doesn't do well in storms and she's home alone with little Samantha. I'll be back in the morning. Dr. Ward replied, speaking of his young granddaughter, who had come to live with once orphaned. As Dr. Ward left the room, Nick and Ashia settled in for a long night at the hospital. I hope everyone is alright. Terramore is alright, Nick said. It's an old house. Most of it doesn't have electricity yet. Good old candles will do the trick, Ashia smirked. Could be sort of romantic, Nick said with a boyish grin. The two of them sat down next to each other on a small love seat and got comfortable. Ashia thought about the secret she was hiding about Alice, and the book she found. It was eating at her that she knew something that he didn't, especially about Alice. But she promised Matthew that she would not tell anyone about the book she found. It was to her benefit that she kept its secret, but it still bothered her, she knowing she was beginning her relationship with Nick by withholding something that perhaps he should know. At the same time, if Matthew was telling the truth, Alice and Nick were truly over. Alice's life as she knew it was gone. If she were supposedly out there somewhere in some strange alternate stage of afterlife, she was someone else or something else. Nick would never see her again. You seem preoccupied. Are you all right? Nick asked, lifting his hazel eyes from his medical book. She smiled back at him, the glowing lights of the candles hitting his beautiful face like a setting sun. She wanted to tell him what she found at Matthew's so badly, but she held back. She leaned over and they began to kiss. They kissed slowly and deeply, parting their lips. Ashia was in love. She could not let anything break them apart. Happiness was so close. Ashia felt if she could not let anything get between them. Not work, Not her education, not Alice's memory, nothing. In the dark, while the storm raged inside the small room, they were they were studying. Nick and Ashia made love for the first time. Evie rolled over in her bed with the rain tapping at her window. She opened her eyes. The blurry fog of sleep still clouded her vision. She turned to her right, expecting to see her mother, who had fallen asleep next to her instead of going back to her own room. But that side of the bed was empty. She lifted her head slightly to look out into the room, thinking maybe her mother was up and sitting in the room with her, but the room was completely dark. The one small lamp that was kept lit on one of the side tables was dark. The blackout in the mansion from the storm had taken it too. Evie moaned as her large belly left have pulled her up out of bed. She looked around again, her hair pulled to one side in bundle of dark and light brown curls. She walked over in her nightgown and opened one of her drawers, guided by the light of the lightning coming into her windows. The lighting, sorry. She grabbed two 12-inch candles, plunged them into the silver handled candelabra sitting on the desk. Then, just as she lit them, she heard a scream down the hall. Her heart was pounding. She quickly grabbed her robe, and with the yellow flickering of the two fresh candles in her eyes, she dashed down the hallway, fearing her mother was in danger. The hallways on the third floor of Caramel House, where many of family's bedrooms were, could become a tangle of confusion if a person was not accustomed to running down them in the dark or even with the slightest bit of light, as Evie was. But she was a professional now at the layout of the mansion, regardless of the of the amount of light the touch the walls or the floors maneuver her way to find the person screaming. As she finally turned a corner, she came to a T-shaped corridor. Down down the corridor, she saw Rebecca standing with her own lantern pounding on Caspian's door. Her voice was the voice Evie heard screaming. "What is it? What's happened?" Evie asked as she caught up to Rebecca, still howling a horrible scream as she banged on Caspian's door that was being held shut by Jacob. Rebecca stopped crying and screaming. She looked at Evie. She looked at her belly. The baby was what Rebecca wanted. If she had Evie's baby, Caspian would give Rebecca the child she lost many, many years ago, her daughter, Vivian Victoria. Rebecca's mind ran in circles. She mumbled to herself crazily. Evie strained to understand, but it was impossible. What are you saying?" Evie asked cautiously as Rebecca's eyes zeroed in on her womb. Under her breath, Rebecca muttered over and over again, "Sacrifice for Vivi, sacrifice for Vivi, sacrifice for Vivi." Evie gulped, unsure of what was happening to her grandmother-in-law, and took a small step back. Inside the bedroom, just behind the door where Rebecca and Evie were standing, Caspian continued to float over the bed at the arms and legs. His eyes were now back to yellow, glowing bright like the sun. Father Ryan continued to pray, as did Jacob and Gregory, who remained at each side of Caspian's bed. "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee," Father Ryan recited. "Blessed art thou amongst women, blessed in the fruit of thy womb." Gregory and Jacob replied. Cassian then lifted his hand that was in the position where it was starting at the ceiling. His eyes brought and fury, his mind still controlling the wild storm that was battering the eye of the Welshport. Yes, yes, the demon growled. Speak of thy fruit of thy womb, Cassian said, hinting at Evie, who was just outside the door. And suddenly, with a sharp power and fury, a burst of energy from Cassian's body exploded and swirled in the room, knocking over Jacob and Gregor, who fell to the ground. The men's eyes turned yellow like Cassian, but they were completely unable to get it. They had been knocked unconscious by the burst of energy, yet their eyes remained open. Father Ryan's eyes opened wide with fear. The ropes around Cassian's arms and legs snapped off. Open by open, Cassian's body began to rotate, with the position of laying in the middle air to now standing, with his feet pulled together, floating over the bed. The monster lifted his hand, and the bedroom door flung open. Even Rebecca saw Caspian's monstrous face. Rebecca's face turned twisted and oddly happy with seeing him. Evie's eyes rolled to the back of her head, and she fainted in Rebecca's arms. Get her out of here, Father Ryan screamed to Rebecca. Let her go, Aurora said at the end of the hall. Do not touch her. She's mine, Rebecca shouted. Rebecca, let her go, Aurora screamed as the other woman as Evie lay limp in Rebecca's arms. Rebecca looped Evie's arm around her neck, and with the strength of someone much younger and stronger, lifted Evie's body from the floor and began to walk away with the young pregnant woman. Aurora pulled Evie's other arm around her neck, and now both women were holding Evie up and slowly walked her back to her bedroom. Evie lay in her bed slowly coming to. Rebecca stared down at her, holding her hand, comforting her while Aurora smoldered in the corner, wringing out a washcloth of cold water for Evie's forehead. Evie moaned and groaned. Then, while she was still in between her fainting spell, lucidity she grabbed at her stomach. Her water broke. The baby was coming. It's time. It's time, Rebecca shouted as she noticed the sheets quickly soaked with fluid. Oh my God, Evie. Evie, wake up, darling. Evie, wake up. Aurora shouted carefully, tapping Evie's cheeks. You have to wake up, darling. The baby is coming. Please, honey, wake up. Evie's eyes flipped open. The blueness sparked in the dark room. She was confused, but felt the labor pains quickly come. She wasn't due for another month. Her body felt like it was being crushed in a vice. She twisted in pain, rolled over and over, screamed into a pillow as the baby began to its way down through her body. You have to turn over, Evangeline. You have to lift your legs, Rebecca said, pulling back the sheets. Darling, focus. Please focus. The baby is coming. We don't have time to call Dr. Ward. And even if we did, the storm is too strong for anyone from the hospital to come. We're going to have to do this together, Aurora said, squeezing Evie's hand. Evie nodded. Evie kept breathing, Evie, keep breathing, Rebecca said, seemingly out of Caspian's mind control. Aurora looked over at Rebecca with suspicion and worry, but she couldn't act on anything. Evie was her main concern, and things were happening fast. Evie pulled on the white sheets in pain and screamed into the night. The pain was immense, and it was as her loins were on fire. She yanked at the pillow with her teeth. The baby screamed. The baby seemed to be ripping her inside out. She screamed and screamed until Rebecca shouted that she could not see the child's head. You're going to have to push, Evangeline. You have to push, Rebecca said. Evie roared like a mother lion, then pushed. The sweat poured down her face like the rain out in the window. She roared again, pushed, push more, squeezing her mother's hand. Aurora encouraged her to push to stay awake despite the pain. Push, my love, push, Aurora said. The head is here. Oh, the baby, the head. Rebecca said with excitement as the baby was slowly coming. Evie, push, darling, Aurora shouted. Evie nodded. She felt like she was about to die. She felt like she was going to pass out, like the air in her lungs were deflating quickly. Her heart was pounding in her chest. The sweat was everywhere. Her body seemed to be everywhere too. The left side of the bed, the right side of the bed. Then finally, one last push, and the baby was out. It screamed its first breath, and Rebecca saw its face, the face just like her grandson Sebastian. Rebecca cried. Aurora cried. All right. Evie laughed as her body fell back in exhaustion. She could feel herself slip into a sleep. She couldn't hold herself awake. Rebecca stood in the center of the room, holding the new Lord baby boy. She smiled at him, knowing that this baby was a connection to Sebastian. She cleaned him and washed his head with a little water from a porcelain basin at the side of the room. I'm so sorry, Rebecca whispered to the baby, knowing that this child was the child she needed to sacrifice that Caspian would gain more power and bring back Vivi. Her warped state of mind was now in danger for the new child. Was now in danger. Rebecca, hand me the child, Aurora said. Rebecca turned to Aurora. Her eyes were yellowing. Aurora furrowed her brow and took a step back from the menacing looking Rebecca. Rebecca, give me the child, Aurora repeated, more forcefully, but still frightened at Rebecca's evil face. Rebecca, filled with the powers from Caspian, powers that were not her own, powers she did not possess, powers she had no control over or understanding how to use them. Her eyes frightened Aurora to her core. The bed blocked Aurora from moving any further away from Rebecca, who lifted her free hand and nearer. Then, with Caspian's power still flowing through Rebecca's body, a jolt of yellow light burst from Rebecca's hand and hit Aurora's chest, knocking her to the ground. Aurora lay there unconscious. Evie lay in her bed, exhausted from just giving birth. She opened her eyes again. There was a blur from sleep and a pain in her body. She again lifted herself up and saw a dark room, then just a few candles glowing over in the dark near the window. Mother, Evie's voice said in a whimper. She saw no one. She turned to her left. No one was sitting on a chair that was there. She turned to her right. No one visible. Aurora, however, lay on the floor, still unconscious. My baby. Where is my baby? Evie said in a small whisper to herself as tears quickly rushed down her face. Aurora got up, moaned, and pulled herself up by grabbing on to the bed. She looked over at Evie, who had panic all over her face. Aurora looked around the room and saw they were the only ones there. The bedroom door was open, the baby was gone, and so was Rebecca. Okay, guys, that's the read along uh, for chapter 10 of Book 4 to Benight and Beguile. Really good. I'm going to read chapter 11 next. Link to this one's going to be in the description box.